Hello, dancers, parents, lover of the arts. I'm very excited to have you here today. Today we have a wonderful episode for you. I've brought on friend, director, and choreographer Sophia Stoller of an LA-based immersion performance company called Iris Company. I'm very excited to have her on. She is a wonderful human, dancer, choreographer, visionary in the arts world, and she has so graciously come on and has talked to us about some of the unexpected twists and turns as she went from dancer to owner and director of her own company. Being that she has spent her professional life here in LA, she talks about some of the beauty and challenges of dance in this very dance-dense city we live in, and shares with us how she got into choreography and directing and so much more. So get your stretch on, enjoy your coffee while you're waiting for your dancer, and enjoy this conversation between Sophia and I. Okay, today I have Sophia Stoller here, who is the choreographer and director of Iris Company in LA, and I'm so excited to introduce her to you guys. So hi, Sophia.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here. So Sophia and I go back about 10 years. We actually met when we were dancing in Israel together, and I asked her to come on today because I have watched her evolve from the time I met her 10 years ago when we were both dancers and working to be professional dancers in companies, and we've evolved so closely and far away from what we started with that I think it's fantastic. Yes. So Sophia, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself? What do you think is important for them to know?
Yeah. So like Allie said, we met back in Israel a long time ago. And at that time, I was hoping to pursue a career as a professional dancer. And since then, my career's taken a pretty big turn in a way that has been really positive for me. And I'm now professional choreographer, like Allie said, the artistic director of Iris Company, as well as just freelance choreographer. So I take commissions and occasionally commercial gigs. I'm based in Los Angeles, so that comes up a bit here. Mm-hmm. And then I'm also a teacher. So I actually teach full-time now. So balancing all of this is a bit crazy, but full-time at Crossroads School in Santa Monica, teaching dance K through 12. And I love it.
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about getting into the teaching aspect, because I don't think that's what you thought you were going to do when I met you.
Yeah, it's not. I actually, right after Israel, came back to LA, and it was just an easy place to land because that's where I had been living prior to going to Israel for a year. And when we were in Israel, we were training full time with Kibbutz Contemporary Dance Company, and everyone there really was the goal to go and get a contract with a company afterwards. But I came back to LA and I didn't have a job and I needed to pay my rent. And a friend of mine said, oh, you should reach out to, there's this school that is a dance charter school. So it's a public school and it's serving some of the lower income populations in LA, and kids there get to dance for an hour every day, which sounded like a dream. And I had been working with kids prior to all through college and prior to my time in Israel, where I was really just focused on being a dancer, but I had always been interested in working with young people, and whether it was through dance or I was a camp counselor, and it was kind of just a fun thing that I did when I was young.
Yeah, I actually remember in Israel we were young and fun and stupid, and
yes,
we made several videos that were choreographed by Sophia that were the best, dumbest things we've ever done. And we would say, Sophia, how do you have this skill? And she was like, oh, I worked with kids in camp forever. So yes. I remember that.
Yes, it was so silly, but it's still with me, and it's evolved over the years of how I interact with kids, because at that time it was just like big energy, as crazy.
Yeah, it was camp.
And it was camp, exactly. And I loved that, and so I thought, okay, let me reach out for this job. So I applied, and it really was at that time. My thinking was, I will teach so that I can choreograph. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see them as being one and the same, which is interesting because now in my job, I feel like I'm a full-time choreographer as a teacher. But at the time it was, it was kids who have never danced before. It was in a school setting and it was not elective based. So it wasn't kids that were coming and saying, I'm passionate about dance. I want to train. They were just kids that were in a good school that had this arts program, and it was arts education. And so it was very recreational in teaching and in curriculum. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know at all.
The best of us have figured stuff out when we're just thrown into the fire. And it ends up working.
It does somehow. And I've learned, the older I've gotten and the more I've done this, I've learned that it's kind of always that way. You just fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Even the people that you look at and think, oh, they've got it all figured out. Oftentimes that's not the case.
And if you talk to them, they'll tell you how lost they felt or how they had no idea what was happening during the moments that we look out from the outside. We're like, wow, they have it so together. Inside, they're going, I have no idea.
Totally. And that was very much me during that phase of time. I had a wonderful mentor who actually is my supervisor at my current job. Strangely enough, we've worked together for so many years. Her name's Chippy Wasson. And she brought me into that job and kind of took me under her wing. I was a baby teacher. I had no experience except for the silly camps and obviously had dance experience. But being trained as a dancer is not necessarily the same as knowing how to teach it.
It's absolutely not. Not at all.
Yeah. At the time I thought, I've taken class. I can teach class. So anyway, that long story short, that it started that way. And I was teaching part-time and I was running, not running, but co-directing a dance collective, which actually you danced with us briefly in.
I did.
And that was called Soul Lab Dance Project. And that was my passion at that time. So it was really, the teaching was the side job, even though that was the thing making money for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before you came to Israel, Soul Lab was in existence, correct?
So immediately after graduating from UCLA, a group of close friends of mine, we were all in the dance department there, decided we wanted to form a dance collective. And that's how Soul Lab was born. And I was part of these intro meetings for this thing we were creating. And again, very much didn't know what we were doing. We knew we wanted to create dance. We knew we wanted to present it. And we knew that if we're passionate enough about it, we'd figure out how to do that. And then I got accepted into the program in Israel. And I said, okay, I could do this like very from the ground up thing here in LA, or I could go do this other experience that I think will provide me with a lot more growth opportunity and come back and hopefully Soul Lab will still be there waiting for me. And so I made that choice and I let them know I very much want to be a part of this, but I have to go and do this other thing for a year abroad. And they were super supportive and they started building it for that first year without me. And then when I came back, was, quickly brought back in and we were working, I think, together for another 2 years after that, 2 or 3 years before it became clear that we were maturing and growing in different directions artistically and that it made sense for us to each kind of go our own way.
Yeah.
But that was a huge learning experience, that first company, so to speak. It was, we figured out how to get work produced in LA.
Which is challenging if you don't know.
It is, yeah. And we were doing, we were taking any gig we could get. I mean, we had some pretty silly gigs that, I don't want to share the footage of now.
Yeah.
I don't feel super proud of anymore. But at the time it was really exciting. And there were some things we did that I was like, wow, that's amazing. We didn't really have it together yet, but we figured out ways to get, consistently be showing our work around the city. So, it was a really good stepping stone.
So we've been talking about kind of your actually pre-artistic director sense, and we keep saying like, oh, it was silly, it was this. But really, Sophia's work was incredible. I got to do some of her work in Israel. I got to work with her and her other co-founders when we came back from Israel with Soul Lab. And yes, there, I'm sure, were some funny things that happened to every dancer.
But really, really some deep work that then, I don't know if you ever thought this would happen, but you ended up going back to school to pursue choreography.
Yeah. I didn't necessarily expect that to happen. In fact, each step of the way in my dance career was like a new little surprise, because I thought I was going to be a dancer and that's all I wanted. And then during this phase that I was talking about, where I was teaching with the charter school and running Soul Lab, I actually also was dancing with a couple companies, very much part-time, but it was my first professional dance work. And I thought, oh, I've made it. I've gone to a company. This is it. This is the dream. And it wasn't. It wasn't everything I thought it would be. And for me personally, I think those companies were really wonderful experiences for other dancers. But that was a shifting point for me, where I realized there were a couple moments that I can really pinpoint in rehearsal with other directors where I thought, I want to be the one with the ideas. Like, I have ideas that I want to share. Yeah. And I felt frustrated just being the paint in the painting. I didn't want to just be the tool that was creating someone else's vision.
Yeah.
I felt a strong sense of directorship, and I wasn't having that voice in those rehearsal rooms. And so that's when I started to think, I've kind of, again, been faking it till I make it with choreography. And I feel like I have a natural instinct for it.
Yeah.
But I hadn't really trained. Like, I didn't feel like I had the education to back it. And I hadn't studied dance composition before in a really serious way. And so that's when I started looking into going back to school and getting my MFA. And I was pretty young to do it. I started applying at age 24 for grad school. And when I was interviewing in schools, they were like, you should be a dancer. This is like your prime time to dance. Don't waste those years in grad school. Most people, I think, go back for their MFA a bit later in their career. But I just had a sense of clarity that that was the next step. And I needed to follow that. And so I ended up going to Cal Arts, getting my MFA in choreography. And the teaching piece of it just kind of kept popping back in out of the wings, because what I didn't know, the degree's name is choreography, but a huge piece of that degree was learning pedagogy and teaching. And I guess I could have done more research and realized that ahead of time, but I sort of showed up day one and was like, oh, this is a huge piece of my degree that I'm getting. Okay, here we are again. And so it feels like it was all meant, because now teaching is such a huge part of my passion. And that time that I was able to really be educated in it and refine my skills as a teacher was so beneficial and hugely influential to what I do now.
Well, it sounds like as you kind of went through that little clarity piece, I think that we all could take a little note from you and look at our own lives and see what part of dance do we enjoy? And it's not just for dance. What part of school, what part of your job, what part of your family, what do we enjoy? And where can I find more of that in other areas of my life? I know that happened for me when I got injured. It was like, okay, what do I love about dance? And how can I create that somewhere else down the road in another part? And you realizing that, yes, it's nice to be a quote dancer, and you love moving and you're a beautiful mover, but what sparks your soul is more of the creation side of it. So deciding to figure out how you can do that more is what I think we all can do in our own various ways. How do we create more joy with the things that we love?
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think it's easy in the dance field to get so stuck on aligning your goal with the people around you. Like it's very competitive world. And so if you're working every day with people who have this one goal, which, in this case, to be a dancer and to be in that company and to work full time and tour, it's easy to kind of just merge your goal into the group goal of, oh, this is what we're working for.
Yeah.
And I think you bring up a really important point of just that moment of self-reflection of what is it about this that I really want. And for me, it took, getting to the point where I actually I wasn't dancing full time in a touring company, but I was dancing for professional companies and getting paid for it. And it wasn't everything that I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And so, even in that stage of just when you're training, when you're growing, when you're young, to really keep refining and reflecting on what about this feeds me. And that might change too. And that's okay. And I think that was really important for me to accept for myself, of what I thought I once wanted, or what I really maybe did want then, is not what I want now. And that's okay.
That is so okay. And we go through so many of those points in life. Like I watch my kids now who are 16, 17, 18, and they're deciding whether they're going to go into what type of professional career. Or, they've spent their lives training hard, and they sometimes get to the point at 17 and they're like, I really love this, but this is not what I want to do as my career. And that let go can be so emotional, because you've just, your identity inside of yourself has been built around this. And the beautiful thing is that as quick as one decision, you can shed that identity and pick up the pieces that work for you now and go forward into life. But you have to be okay with making that decision for yourself. And that's challenging. We'll have to kind of dive into that kind of stuff more on the podcast, maybe bring you back, because it's challenging.
Absolutely.
So as you have gone into being a director and a choreographer and really owning your company now, you guys have done some beautiful work. And I have to applaud Sophia and let you guys know that she has combined so many elements into her dance company that don't exist in other companies. And I would say the majority of companies. One thing about Sophia's family, and me, our friends, we love this, we love to talk about this, is that her whole family is so artistically creative and genius. And I mean the word genius.
You're very kind.
No, but it's true. So the point of that is that she has her amazing choreography and dancing skills, but every single member of her family has something else to offer into this artistic realm that I see come through in your company, including your husband and his whole profession very closely is now part of what you've created as a company,
Absolutely.
Correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So as you've made that transition, how did you see, or did you even see those parts coming together? Was it a conscious choice, or did it just kind of start happening? What happened to end up with the company you have today?
That's a great question. I really give a lot of credit to my time at CalArts, actually. And I mean, I think my creative family has always influenced my vision and the way that I look at art and create art. But CalArts is very incredible place because it's all under one roof. There's a million different artists of different mediums creating, and it was built to foster collaboration. And so in my time there, it was very much encouraged. If you're going to create a piece, you collaborate with a composer and they write original music for it. For my thesis, for example, I had access to a video designer that created projections that was part of the piece. I had lighting designers that completely built the world that the show existed in. Original music. We had got to work with costume designers, and all of that was facilitated by the program. So I wasn't, now with the company, I hire and have to figure out a way to pay all those people. But in that educational setting, it was everybody was working towards their degree in those different métiers. And so everybody was learning by collaborating. And my thesis could be somebody else's thesis as well. For example, like the costume designer could have used the costume she built for my show as her thesis project in costume design. And so that was one of the reasons that I really felt like I needed to go to CalArts specifically, was to build those connections and relationships, because I was so interested in how dance could intersect with other mediums and how it could be enhanced by production design and film, which is what my husband Peter does, and how dance on film can be really accessible to today's audiences and easier to distribute and be seen by a wider audience. And it was during my time at CalArts that I was able to take a dance film class and learn video editing skills, which then I had my husband, Peter, then he was my boyfriend at home, being my in-home tutor, like, oh, I have to edit this little thing together. How do I do this and this? So I feel like I was accelerated in being able to learn that because I had I could call in for help at any moment when I was stuck in my personal, relationship to serve that. And then doing that thesis project, basically I created an evening length work. And that was my first full evening of choreography I'd ever produced, created. But it was in this safe space where I didn't need to budget, which is the hugest obstacle now.
Yeah.
And so I could really just focus on the creative and the collaborations.
Mm-hmm.
And then coming out of that, I felt like I really needed to keep going with that type of work.
Yeah.
And it took me a couple years. Well, let's see. I guess it was 1 full year after that I founded Iris Company, and just kind of dove in with our first show was a huge immersive evening length piece, and there were many elements to it, and I just dove in head first, and our debut performance was a pretty massive production.
Yes, it was. And if you're listening, I highly suggest, while you're just sitting waiting for class or whatever you're doing, or if you're a parent waiting in the car, go look up her company on Instagram. It's Iris Company. That's
.la.
.la. Her Instagram is beautiful, and you will see just instantly, without even looking at a video, how they have combined all these different elements together. And so it really is just stunning work to just look at, let alone be part of that experience. But as you're talking, I want to bring it back. I'm circling back around to you finding the thing that drives you, because I remember when we were in Israel working together and we got the chance, I got to be in your choreography, and then again back in Soul Lab. Mm-hmm. One of your strengths that is an amazing strength that does not come naturally to a lot of people is that you are a phenomenal coach. You see each person, dancer, and I'm assuming composer and lighting director and photographer, you see them for their talents and what their art does well. So in the dance world, what their bodies do well. And I felt like instead of saying, this is how my body moves, do the movement like my body does it, you said, oh, well, you're actually a very swirly, circular, like low to the ground dancer. Let's see how this looks like this. And so your pieces very much became about how you brought together all these dancers into one element. And then when you put on this full length thing, I remember sitting there thinking, this is so Sophia, because what I had experienced was just the choreography side, right? Just the small little element of dancers. But I could totally tell that every element that you're bringing in, I could just see you finding the best of that person, the best of that element, and bringing that into your show, which I feel is what makes your pieces so powerful and speak to people. And I hope from the outside, again, that seems to be your passion and where you're finding the drive to keep doing this type of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I will say that also is where I've kind of come around full circle with being super passionate about teaching as well. Because in my choreography, before I realized that that I could do this with students and how to do it successfully with younger students. Like you said, it was always what fascinated me the most as a choreographer was pulling something out of each dancer on an emotional level, sometimes as a character, connecting to themes in a visceral way to then see what movement comes from that place. And so I work super collaboratively with my dancers. I'm not always generating the movement, like you said, and coming in and saying, okay, learn this phrase. This is how I do it. And this is exactly how I want you to do it. And part of that is because at this point, most of the dancers in my company are stronger dancers than I am.
Yeah.
And, I'm not training in that way anymore. with the goal of putting myself on stage. And so, what their bodies come up with is fascinating, and pulling out of improvisation and finding movement from organic places within that dancer, I find to be so much more interesting than trying to paste on an aesthetic. And I think it's a lot more dynamic, and the performance can touch someone in a deeper way when the dancer is moving from a really real place. And then bringing designers into that is, like you said, it's the same thing. It's pulling their expertise out and into creating a space in the rehearsal room where we're all living in the same creative world. And it's my job as the director to communicate what that world is, but then really inviting them to bring their own ideas to that space. There's so many brilliant artists out there. And I think when different minds can come together in a cohesive way and be facilitated towards one vision, it's amazing what can happen. And it's super exciting.
I agree. And what you've created with a lot of work, I know I have an idea of what it costs to put on even just a basic dance show. We'll just go with we're getting bare bottom everything. It's all about the dancers, let alone a whole production, is a ton of money and a ton of work for you to figure out how to come up with that, where it's coming from, all that kind of stuff. And this really is what Sophia is talking about doing. She's doing what gigantic companies do. The ability to have somebody who can communicate with a costume director or a lighting person and say, let's look at how this dancer moves and let's figure out how to highlight their movement with your costume, with your lighting. I have not experienced that in any small company, and I have only seen it happen in big companies through documentaries and or working with dancers who are in that company. So I really have to say that what you're accomplishing with a lot of work, I know, is the level of a high, big, gigantic company that has a lot of money.
Oh, thank you.
It's really, really been so wonderful to watch your company grow and watch your artistic self be put in and out of that.
Thank you.
So one thing I was thinking about before is that because you are a stellar small company in LA, you've been able to audition dancers. You yourself have danced in small companies. I can guess and know from our past that a lot of this stuff was not even pay worth bragging about.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So you've been there and done that, where a lot of dancers do end up after high school. We, with the best intentions, and think we're going to get a job in, like you said, the big touring company or with the music video of your dreams. And you get to the audition and realize that there are 1,000 other dancers exactly like you. Yeah. And it's a big kick in the gut. And I say keep going. But what has been your experience being a small dance company that auditions dancers for that small dance company? Does that make sense? It's different than auditioning for a big dance company, meaning lots of money. You're going to have subs and people who can take care of you if something happens. That's not what happens in, our little companies that are actually most of the ones in the US.
Yes. Yeah. So I built the company off of an audition, and actually since then have retained, to my amazement, most of the same dancers have been with me since we started in 2016. And my audition, I think a lot of dancers were really surprised by it because, like I said, for me and my process, it's so important that I have people in the room who are intelligent, not just with their bodies, but intelligent thinkers that have creative ideas and can contribute in that way and are open to sharing ideas, and also who have some composition skills, who are comfortable with improvisation and movement invention, because every person in the room has a creative stake in the work. And I actually think that's probably why they've stayed with me for 3 years, even though I'm not paying them a salary. I mean, it's just not possible. In a small company, you're dancing for many companies, ideally. And, most of my dancers dance for other people. They teach, gyro teachers, Pilates teachers, dance teachers, they have other jobs, because it's just not realistic at this time, as much as I wish I could to pay them a proper wage. I pay them, each project is paid something, and that's as much as I can promise. And it varies project to project. So they're not relying on me as a financial income. They know that it's, depending on the budget per project, it might be a $300 stipend at the end, and that's all they're going to get. So, so that being said, I think in the audition process, I had them all create something, and I watched them work in small groups with each other and gave them a task, and I had them improvise. And only a small part of the audition was actually me teaching a phrase and watching them do it in groups, because all of those skills are really important to creating a company like this. And then I think also having dancers that want that, that are hungry for being in a space where they get to have creative input. I think that's why they've stuck around. Yeah. Is that they get a creative stake in the work.
Yeah. Well, it's fantastic. And that's not every dancer's dream. Exactly. Right? That's not exactly what every dancer would want. But as you're talking about that audition process, I'm thinking of what can happen both in small little companies like you have that are about the creative process, and then even ones that are more about, this is my choreography. I need a dancer that fits my bill right now. But I think that's something we maybe don't realize as young dancers, is that the way we show up in an audition, the kindness you show sitting on the side of the room before anything, quote, starts, is very important. Dan, would you agree that from the moment that person walks in, you're watching how they interact? If you're going to be creating a piece with them that's intimate and that's going to take your time, and you're going to be you're already working a full work day. This is probably on top of that. These people better be the best humans you can find in an audition. And
absolutely,
I think that they're, like I said, you walk into an audition sometimes and you find out there's been 1,000 other dancers that have been before you. That has happened to me several times. Yeah. The way you're going to set yourself apart is by the way you show up, the kindness you have. I think your improvisation skills are super important. Not every company is ever going to use your improv, but I feel like most companies these days ask for some type of improvisation and the ability to improv with another dancer.
Absolutely. I think that's really true. Especially, I can speak for sure for, the LA dance community, which is small, and a lot of small companies. And that is a huge piece of the way I think a lot of directors are creating here. I imagine it's probably different in New York, different scene, but
I think so, but not crazy different, but I definitely, I remember at the time I was dancing with Soul Lab. I was also dancing with a small company in New York. And it was the type where it's like, you're going to go out 2 weeks before. I was crashing on someone's couch and we learned the whole thing in 2 weeks. But it was very different from what we were doing in LA with you and the other girls. And so there's definitely going to be that variety depending on where you are. If you're in Europe, if you're here in the US, what part of the US. But speaking as an LA born and raised dancer here, not born, but raised here dancer. I think that I get a lot of dancers that more they come from a competition background. They think they're going to make it in a music video, or they're going to be on So You Think You Can Dance, or World of Dance. And then they get out here and they realize that that's not as easy as they thought. And they end up coming to auditions like for your company that maybe they didn't have that upbringing of collaborating and improvisation and whatever else comes with that. Have you had a chance to work with people like that you've had to mold a little bit and get your fingers on? What advice would you give to somebody who maybe has more of that traditional do what I say background and is venturing into more of the small collaborative movement?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have worked, my dancers come from a variety of backgrounds. Some of them actually are still working also commercially. So they're kind of bridging the two worlds currently. And some have had less success with the commercial world. Like you said, it's extremely hard to break into that. So much of it is about your look, which is extremely frustrating because it no matter what you have to bring as a dancer, sometimes that doesn't matter at all in those auditions.
Your hair's the wrong shade of brown.
Yep, exactly. And so yeah, I think getting into, go take an improv class if you can find one. Take a Gaga class. They offer here in LA at the Sweat Spot. Daniela Gami, who's the artistic director of 8-9, teaches Gaga every week, and it's all just about finding your own movement language. And when I'm looking at dancers, when I go take class here, I'm always scouting, in a very informal way and not in a way that anyone would know, but I'm always looking for dancers, new dancers coming into LA that have something different. And for me, that's really the most interesting thing is what can they bring that's unique? I'm not interested in having a company where every dancer looks the same and dances the same. I'm extremely interested in diversity in every sense of the word. And if something catches my eye of, I've never seen someone move that way before, that's what's going to excite me, because that's going to bring in a new flavor into our rehearsal space when we're in process. So I think just cultivating your uniqueness is actually super valuable for the concert dance world in LA. And you want to stand out in an audition. You want to stand out and show that you have something unique that you can offer. And I don't know where this is available if you're not in a college dance program. I think more and more universities and conservatories are really offering space for young dancers to learn how to collaborate, because the old-fashioned company model, well, it still exists, but it's becoming less and less common, I think, for most dance careers to go into that world where you're just doing what the choreographer says exactly. It's much more common to get a job in a smaller company where you're expected to collaborate. And so I think that the BFA programs out there are shifting to help bring those skills to dancers. So, but looking, if you are a young dancer and you're looking to get a degree in dance and go into a college setting before you move into going to audition, look for programs that are going to provide that broad spectrum of technique training and composition training, because those are the dancers in my company that I lean on the most, that have both of those things, and that had that education.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. So if you're a young one or you're not sure what to do next, go find a random class that makes you feel uncomfortable. That is my go-to. It's still uncomfortable for me sometimes when I go take class and I think, I haven't done this, or something new that I in my head, I have a story going on that I'm not the best at this. And you have to remember, you don't have to be the best. That's the beautiful thing about taking class. And that's the beautiful thing about improvisation. And, our technique level of dancers is insane. Even just from 10 years ago when you and I were training, the tricks and things that are standard were not heard of 10 years ago.
So true.
That makes me feel ancient, but it's true. Like, if you could do an aerial, you were on top of the world. And that was the kind of the extent of a trick. And so with the technique level rising, with the trick level insanely high, what is going to set you apart in my observation is if you can already do that stuff, it's going to be your personality and the personality that you can show inside of your dance and choreography. And I think if you don't know how to do that in class, another way to find that joy is to go find things that you don't have nothing to do with dance. Go find joy doing something else and know what that feels like, and then recreate that, find that joy back in the studio. because I remember, and I think that some of my dancers feel burnout quite often, and it's still something we love, and it's you need a break, but you don't always get a break. So if you can go find the spark, the joy in something else, you can remember, do I actually feel this when I'm dancing? And if the answer is yes, then you have your spark back. If the answer is no, maybe you got to find what you like about dance and go down your journey like Sophia and I have been doing for the last 10 years of how do we fit in the dance world without being a high paid royal ballet dancer.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. Finding the joy in other things as well is so important. And bringing your personality to your dancing, being able to connect a sense of emotion and emotional maturity to the way that you dance, to me, is so much more interesting than the tricks.
Yeah.
And I think that's I can probably speak for a lot of choreographers when I say that.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely. So we're coming up on our time here. So I want to make sure that everyone heads over and checks out Sophia's company. So we're going to drop the stuff into the show notes. But Sophia, tell us how we can reach you, and if you have any mailing lists or anything that people can get on to hear more about your shows or any upcoming opportunities you might have. How can we get in touch with you?
Yeah. So we mentioned it a little earlier, but my Instagram is a great way to follow what we've got going on. It's iriscompany.la, and that's same for Facebook. And then I have a mailing list as well, which you can access on my website. And my website is sophiastoller.com, and that takes you to all the information about Iris Company, as well as my commissioned work and freelance choreography. And on the contact page there was a little box that pops up and says join our mailing list. So if you're interested in joining the mailing list, you'll get our e-blasts that inform you about upcoming performances, workshops. We actually have we're in the planning stages of a workshop for teens that's going to be coming up. The date is still getting decided, but
awesome.
Keep an eye out for that.
We will post that in the show notes, because this is going to, right at this current time, we're not airing this right now, so I bet it'll be perfect timing for that.
Amazing.
Yeah, so we will look in the show notes for that date. And I highly recommend, if you're a dancer or a parent, that you join Sophia's mailing list, as many mailing lists as you can about companies. You're going to learn so much about them by the information that they put out, the videos they put out. So as you're searching to figure out what your next thing in dance is, or where you want to go, or who you want to get more involved with, a really nice way is just to know what's going on in these companies. And when Sophia's going to have any jams or anything that's going to happen, you want to go check them out and see, is this person something I'm interested in? So go join those mailing lists.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sophia, for coming on. It's been wonderful to speak with you. And I think we will be having you back on here, because you got some great nuggets that we need to dive into more.
Yes. It's been great being here. I really appreciate you having me on, and it's been awesome talking to you.
Thanks, Sophia. Now, at the end of each episode, I'm going to take a quick second to share with you guys something that I'm loving. This could be something that I've loved forever, or something that I've just recently discovered. Talking to Sophia reminded me that when we met, this was my starving artist time of life, and was always looking for something cheap to assist me to be healthy. And one thing that I started way back then that I still love is using coconut oil as a lotion. So this is very greasy. And if you don't know what coconut oil is, you can go to pretty much any store at this point, and in the oil aisle, they'll have it in like a jar. And it will turn to liquid when it gets above like 80 degrees, and then it's a solid when it's below that. No matter what it looks like, you can take a little bit in your hand, rub it together, and use it like lotion. It's really great for your skin. It's moisturizing. I think it smells good, and it will assist to hold in the moisture at night instead of having to pay for a more expensive body lotion. And also then you can cook with it.
So if you've never heard of this, you might be thinking, geez, this girl's crazy. But go look it up. This is a legit recommendation. And it's something that I found when I was feeling a little bit poorer. And I still use it to this day. I have a little jar by my bed and I put it on my elbows and my hands and my feet at night. And then when I wake up in the morning, it's all absorbed and I have baby soft skin. Last thing. If you are loving this podcast, be it the people, the experiences, the information they're bringing, the vulnerability, whatever it is, I'm asking a quick favor that you take 2 minutes right now to write us a really quick review. I know that when I was younger, I did not know what the power of a review was until I owned a business. Not only does it recommend other people, other dancers, other parents like you to listen to this information, but it also assists the powers beyond me of the internet to know where to put this podcast, to know where to put the information, and to recommend this to other dancers just like you. The other thing is that the more love this podcast gets, the more willing your favorite prima ballerinas, choreographers, dance educators will be to come on and share their knowledge and information. So the more that you share the love, the people will want to come and share their love with you. So if you want to hear more from them, please leave us a review down below. And I will see you guys next week on our next episode of Beyond the Point.